Lately today I noticed twice, twice today, I heard somebody make reference to a phenomena which actually has a term, like it's like a law type thing, like Murphy's law or Occam's rate, that kind of stuff, and it was any conservative or right wing institution over time naturally goes left. And that's like spoken of as a law. That's something that just, it is what it is. Like, we don't know necessarily why, or at least I'm not privy to why. But I like watching Victor Davis Hanson. He's got some really good, really smart guy, knows his stuff. I mean, it really, listening to somebody who knows the classics and knows Rome and Greece as well as he does, it really does force you to recognize that knowledge is valuable. Antiquity, because no matter what we're going through, they always went through some iteration of what we're going through. It may be a more it's not quite as developed or modern, but they have their own version of everything. The whole transgender. I mean, that stuff was in Greek plays. It was in um, those types of sentiments were spoken of even back then. And anyway, so I really like watching that because he imparts a certain uh, tradition and wisdom into what he's talking about. And he's on Fox and stuff too. But I watch he does like three or four podcasts a week. I like to watch. But anyway, he was talking about this drift, institutions drifting to the right. And the same thing with, I want to say, I was watching that Pearl, the ginger girl, Pearl, and she was talking about how it seems that, because it's a fallen world, that the culture just gets worse and worse. That it never goes right. It only goes left. And I just wanted to say that it actually isn't so. I mean, even just as recent as the English Civil War with Oliver Cromwell in the 1600s, you went from the Middle Ages, which is, uh, like you went from Geoffrey Chaucer, who was writing the Canterbury Tales, writing about farting in people's, faces, like, and weird, crazy stuff, that took place in medieval times. And it went from that really kind of libertine, just do your thing, to Puritans, um, big time. And then also like the Protestant Reformation and those things. Those are all instances and examples of when the culture goes rightward. And something that I've noticed, at least to my mind, it seems like the culture slowly gets dragged to the left, but when it corrects to the right, it's kind of just a boom. It just snaps and goes way, it just like defaults back to some weird factory setting. I don't know what it is, but like, to go from libertinism to Puritanism. And of course, Puritanism was a cause of libertinism. It was considered it was too loose. So and in Oliver Cromwell's day, like he freaked out over gold in the church and like gold candlesticks and stuff. Like that wasn't to be tolerated. And it just occurred to me, a while ago that societies do go rightward. They do become more conservative. They can become more conservative. I'm not saying that, you know, uh, it's an inevitability, but in the past, in the past of our peoples too, as Americans, that were once British subjects, uh, you know, our ancestors had a much more, more their the past was more libertine, and it's gone from being libertine to being very conservative to back to libertine to conservative. And right now it seems like we're coming out of a really gnarly libertine phase with the sexual revolution. And I just, I feel like people forget the fact that this stuff happens, that cultures do just boom shift to the right. And what was acceptable, a month ago, I mean, and you can see it slowly already. It's snowballing. What was acceptable 2 years ago really isn't acceptable anymore, or isn't. What was lauded and valued before isn't necessarily what's valued right now, and won't be necessarily what's valued in the near, not too distant future. I just thought, it was two circumstances I heard of talking about how everything seems to slippery slope off into some crap direction. But that's not always the case. And, the liberals, they fear it as much as we fear the slippery slope. They fear that we are going to end up back in some Christian medieval times. I don't even know what they fear, to be honest with you, but it seems to me like they fear traditional good things, traditionally good things. And we may see a revival of those. I may see a revival of that stuff in my lifetime. And I think that's a good thing. And it would be a good thing if the culture kind of reeled it back in from where it's at now.